If I could just get you guys starting over here to go around and give your name.
Janelle Hebby.
Anise Bowles.
Audrey Deering.
Gladys Weiss.
Back Hill.
Gladys Pfluger.
Melanie Samuelson.
Gloria Kemple.
Gretchen Campbell.
Okay. So it doesn't sound like you guys need a lot of conversation starters. We've known each other forever. But what we'd like is you guys just to share stories amongst yourselves about Pflugerville before 1965. If you grew up here, what it was like growing up here. If you came here as a young married person, whatever you guys would like to share. So, how many grew up here?
For the most part. Gone for a little while.
He's got it.
Since I was a baby.
What do you remember about your parents?
Working,
Yeah.
hard
Hard
working,
workers, yeah.
little
Hard
money.
workers.
No rest for the weary.
Right.
Did you
Yeah.
guys have to do a lot of chores, help with the?
Helped around the house.
Just around the house. I
Work in
didn't
the
grow up on
garden.
a farm,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember at night, Mother would be reading the devotions, and Daddy would be coming in about 9 or 10 o'clock from the field. Y'all know how that was, it lived
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And then he would be falling asleep. He never heard those devotions. He's a very Christian man, but he fell asleep, bless his heart. He was so,
Well, they did get
Tired.
up at dawn.
yeah, and they got up so early. And of course, then that changed later when, as all y'all remember, we had such a drought in the 50s, am I right? In the 50s.
Yes.
And many of the farm women had to go get a paying job. And my mother was one of them. And so,
Where'd she
That-
get her job?
well, Mother had gotten her RN degree from Scott and White Hospital, and she'd also gone to, which y'all know now, it's Texas Lutheran University. It was called Luther College at that time. So she had her degrees, and then she had to go back a year, not a year, I don't know how long it was, but to renew her license because she had been out of the nursing profession for so long. And she and the lady from Hutto, his name I can never remember. They lived right there on the highway before you got to 79. Who were those people? Anyway, they went together, and anyway, so then that kind of changed lives in our household. I don't know about that.
And my mother had to go to work too.
Yeah,
Yeah, she
and
was.
there were a lot of them that did. I mean, certainly not the only one by any means.
Well,
I
my
have-
dad was
I
my,
have to prompt Max sometimes because he's not gonna talk.
I know.
Okay.
But what do you remember about your mom and dad, Alvina and Max Senior?
He raises on a farm where the chickens, Daddy had a roll on red chickens that he took to an age, he took to a hatchery,
Yeah.
and Mother had she did her, took care of the washing.
Sewing. She did a lot of sewing.
She did all the sewing for the children, for the girls.
Yeah.
And what did she do with the chickens?
Was the chicken?
And there were too many of them.
Oh,
No, well, they took them took the eggs to hatchery, to Pet Maker's hatchery in Austin, and I remember the university had a Chinese student that sectors those chicks as they about a day old. He could tell
What they
a
were.
hen from the roosters, and I was amazed at that.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Well, we took our eggs. I had to hunt eggs every day, crawling all up in the H barn, up among the hay bales, because our chickens ran wild. And we took them every week, maybe a couple of times a week, down to the Pflugerville Mercantile.
Yeah.
Traded them for our groceries.
Yeah.
Got out there and churned a churn full of butter, had a couple of pounds of butter, took that down there, sold the butter, helped trade for the groceries. We never had to buy groceries, we traded eggs
good.
and butter for groceries.
Yeah.
And so we lived.
We all had gardens. Everyone had their own garden, or you would butcher something from a farm, and people would do the corn, the sweet corn, and and I remember watching. I'm on a picture with my grandma, and she's chopping off the head of a turkey, and she has the pot of lye soap out there, and she's holding me back. I've got on a little wool cap. I made a list of some of the things we didn't have when I was little, and there was some of y'all are a little older, not much. We didn't have a library. We had the bookmobile every 2 weeks
Yeah.
from Austin. We had no swimming pool, we had no tennis courts, no fast food restaurants, no movie theaters, no car washes, no mattress stores, hardly any any traffic. We had no air conditioning, no large roaches, we didn't have that. We had
Roaches?
we didn't have a sewer system. We had no rec centers, no trails, no homeowners associations, no drive-through anything.
Y'all remember when they put in the sewer system? What
Yes.
that was?
Even at my house, I didn't have it, I had a septic tank.
Yeah.
We did have churches, small local restaurant, marching band, one small local grocery store, as far as what I remember. We had the meat market, we had family reunions, we had a Mayfete, we had one little league park, we had huge weddings with the grand march. We had a small post office, we had screen doors that we didn't have to lock. We had a lumber yard, one bank where there's a tattoo parlor now. We had freight trains, railroads coming through, we had a depot, we had a cotton gin. We were segregated from African Americans till I got about middle school. Our Mexican American friends did go with us all the way from first grade, still friends today. We had just one elementary school when I went, and a combination junior high and high school. We had graduation in the Pflugerville High School gym. We had our one water tower. We, let's see. My school was so little, my dad was my principal. He was a bus driver sometime, my coach, my teacher. My mother was my teacher. I've got a comedy routine I did do, but I'm not gonna do that on
For the
film.
sake of this, maybe you should give the years, about what years are you talking
Okay,
about?
I was born in '51.
How about-
So, all of these things, the movie, by the time my daughter was in high school here, we had those early tennis, early, I was about 24 when we got the little concrete. We didn't have a swimming pool till a long time. And the library just started, in the little building, and then it grew gradually from one place to another, and then it was in the house that was one of my old boyfriend's houses at one point. And then downtown was the first one and then we donated books, and now it's the fabulous place today.
Well, Audrey is one of the founders of the library.
I know, y'all did a great job. We had farms, tractors, trailers, volunteer fire department, several small gas stations where an attendant would come out and put your gas in and clean off your windshield and put water
And
in.
your tires.
We had flora and fauna, we did have road runners, a lot of scissor tails, we had these horned toads, we had these large red ants, we didn't have fire ants. I don't know, there's something in the ecology has changed with all that. We hardly ever saw a rattlesnake or anything in town, now.
Hardly out in the country.
They're coming to town now, we've disturbed all there. We had a barber shop, we had a party line of phones. My grandma would get on there and she'd listen in just to let y'all know to other people. And you had she had one of those old rotary dial thing
I don't
phones.
know if it was busy or not.
So I've got a comedy routine I wrote. Now what we do have is a lot of people and friends and people from all cultures and backgrounds, which are really interesting and fun to know and get to know about all their lives and cultures. We have a growing number of schools. They're all air conditioned. We have an award-winning library. We have theaters, parks, fitness centers, convenience stores, grocery stores, garden centers, fast food restaurants, regular restaurants, book clubs, music. You can go to drive-through. You can go through I can do nearly everything from my car. I can go to the pharmacy, the bank, fast food.
Yeah, when
They have
we
Zumba.
raised our kids, there was no doctor. You had to go, everything was in Austin.
Yeah.
You didn't even have a doctor in Round Rock. For a period of time there was not a doctor in Round Rock.
That was
We have a
when you were
doctor here, we did have
Well,
doctors.
yeah, that would be.
We had doctors in Pflugerville.
But
That
not
was
when I
before
had
that
my
time.
kids.
We had Dr. Coon.
Yeah, before I was
Before
born.
your time.
Yeah,
We
before
Before
my
your
time.
time you did.
We had
Then we had a
doctors in
cat, we didn't have
Pflugerville.
anybody.
We did have doctors in Pflugerville. We had,
Schiller,
huh?
Dr.
Mr.
Schiller.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you have a pharmacy
Yes,
back then?
yes.
And
We had
Macy's.
in-
Was it Macy's? Yeah, I remember that. I was alive when Macy's. You and the Mercantile.
Now think about school. Well, you're
Macy's.
talking about school. Think about when Max and I were in school. He started the year after I was, but I was in the second grade, he was in the first grade. Same room, one teacher.
What year was that?
I guess I started in in the 30,
34.
34. You started 34, I started 33, I think.
Yeah.
And we were all, the whole school was in that red brick building
Mm-hmm.
from the first grade. We didn't have any kindergarten, anything like that. But we were the first grade, so up through the 11th grade, only 11th grade.
Right, yeah.
We knew every person in that school. If there was a new kid came in somewhere in high school, we little kids down in elementary school knew that we had a new kid in second grade.
It's a real
The
knowledge.
high school
you know.
kids knew that there was a new kid started school down in the second grade that year,
Yeah,
that day.
yeah.
We knew everybody, we saw everybody, the whole.
And all ages rode on the buses together when they had
Well, there
the bus.
was no bus.
I know, you didn't have
Max
a bus
did
then.
not ride a bus
No,
the
sure
first
didn't.
years.
And how did you get to school when you didn't have a bus?
Neighbors.
Huh?
Neighbors.
Neighbors picked you up.
And your aunt,
Yeah.
your aunt also.
Well, in the first grade, I stayed Grandpa. She taught school at Greg, and she dropped me off, and then she picked me up in the evening.
Yeah.
There were no
Well, did
buses.
anybody ride horses to school at
Not
that
that-
time?
No, but
You
there
did.
was a horse barn
Did.
back there. There
You
was
did.
there was
Didn't
a
you?
stable back there.
Did you ride a horse to
Did you
school?
ride a horse?
Rode to confirmation school.
To
confirmation.
On a horse, okay.
What about carriages?
Not
But-
Leo,
Horse-drawn
Leo,
No.
No, not that.
That's
Leo
Disability
Litkey and
Starship.
Johnny Litkey lived north of town, and they rode horses and stabled them there and next to the football field. Yeah.
It wasn't the football field, it was our pasture.
That's right.
Jesse used to
They
say
knew that
football.
They played
played
football.
football, they had to run around the cow patties out in the
Yeah.
pasture.
Jesse used to say before they played, they had to pick up the cow
Pick up
patties.
patties, yeah.
And they had that wrong in the paper too. That was where they won the 55 games on that
No,
old.
they
No.
didn't.
No,
they didn't win it at the new stadium.
No, they
Well,
were not.
the school, the one
But they
behind the
had the
school, but it wasn't
stadium.
on their pasture.
No,
No,
the stadium behind the school,
Yeah.
not
What she's
the,
talking about.
not the
is-
Kimples.
That
What she's
wasn't a
talking about
stadium,
is
that was a
behind
football
that.
field.
Really?
The
Their
real
pasture.
old football.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where Pastor Hill was the announcer on Friday
Right,
night and the
right.
preacher on Sunday morning.
That's
Yeah.
right, I was there.
Well, I guess Gladys and I brought down the old high school
That's what
because
we did.
they had a tornado right before our graduations, and we had our graduation ceremony on the football field.
Right.
And then they tore it down.
Yes, and then they tore it down, yes.
Can we go back? I did not know this. Dr. Schiller?
Yeah.
We had a
did I
lot of
understand you?
doctors.
I'm sorry, where was he located?
In the drugstore, they had an
Like where
office
the
in the
tree-
drugstore.
Okay, yeah, that's what, okay. Yeah, which
Yeah.
was on Main Street. For
And
the
we had
sake of people
doctors
that are
before
listening.
him.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know, but he's my grandpa, Max's great grandpa.
Dr. Coon.
Way back, I guess in the
Yeah.
1800s, wanted a doctor in Pflugerville.
Okay.
And he built the house, the one in front of the bomber's house. Grandpa, George Pfluger, built that house for a doctor and brought a doctor to town, to Pflugerville.
In front of the bomber's house?
In front of it, it's,
On
It's
Second
cat a
Street.
corner from it.
yeah,
Catty-corner.
and that was Mr. Huddle lived in that house later.
Oh.
I don't know if y'all remember Mr. Huddle. Mr. Huddle, he was responsible for bringing us our mail.
Oh,
Our mail came off of the train. We didn't have one train came through a day. We had a train came through all day long. We had a 2:30 train, a 4:30 train, an 11:30 train, and he'd go to the post office, pick up the mail bag, and he had a post hanging out there. Now, it was a special made contraption, and he hung that
Great.
mail bag up there, and that train would come by with a hook
and pick
and
it up.
grab that bag of mail and take it on and throw out the new mail. We went to the post office after 11:30, after 2:30, and after 4:30. Believe me, my bicycle went to the post office 3 times a day all summer long.
And there weren't any ad sheets in there.
No, it wasn't any
It
junk
wasn't
mail.
a no junk mail.
One time when I was maybe about 6 or 7, my cousin Thomas Temple from Texas City, he sent Valentine's in the mail to Salma and Ada.
they
And
got
all
it.
he put on the envelope was Salma and Ada
That's right, yeah,
in
they got
Pflugerville,
it.
Texas, and they got them like
That's right.
2 days later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was so fun.
very common, even I did that, sending letters, you could just put the town and they got the mail, that was even, you know.
I remember the first
Sound and
time-
Native, of course, were
Oh, yeah.
before
Yeah.
me, of course.
I remember the first time someone asked me who I was.
In '55, I was in Navy out in San Diego, and I hitchhiked a plane to Fort Worth to Grand Prairie, and I had to check out a parachute, and I brought that parachute back to Pflugerville and sent it back to San Diego. That was in '55. That was still operating. I don't know how much longer after that, but Mr. Southern,
Mr. Southern had a telegraph office, y'all didn't know that? Down in that depot, you could go in down to that depot, send a telegram anywhere in the world. I guess the United States, I know, probably of the world. He came every day, and if you got a telegram, you could telegraph people in Pflugerville, and you could send telegraphs out.
Yeah.
It's odd that Pflugerville way back had so many things that are gone.
Right,
And
Hotels.
maybe
And you
say
said one little grocery store. We
well,
had at
when
least
I was
five-
little.
We had at least 5 or 6 grocery stores.
That was in the 50s.
well, we had the Mercantile and.
Yeah, Salma and Ada was over there all the
Well, we
time.
had an ice house, wasn't there an ice house?
Yeah, there was an ice house.
And
Ice factory.
factory, sorry, and, of course, a bank, everybody has a bank.
Max
but-
had an uncle that had a store, Uncle Fish,
Yeah,
right?
Fish had a store.
there were 5 stores that I remember at one time.
Grocery stores?
Yeah.
Grocery stores.
That was before me.
Durford was down,
There's where's you?
and below the tracks,
Or Donhofer, you mean?
Donhofer.
Oh, the Donhoffers, yeah, that was a
Yeah.
grocery store there, yeah.
and then
Stager store.
Stegers and Marshalls and
and
Mercantile.
Mr. Bowles, Arthur Bowles had one next to the
Yeah.
meat market.
Arthur Bowles.
And Slater had one, Mr. Mercantile,
Stricker, yeah, Mr.
and
Stricker.
Uncle Fish,
Now, where was Uncle Fish's? Where was that?
right, between the bank and the,
Oh.
In that bank building
Yeah,
where the,
yeah, okay, yeah.
where the nurse.
I have to interject, I just know stories from Max, but I want him to tell you all about a story about a nickel he got from Lyndon Johnson.
From Lyndon Johnson.
The nickel you got from Lyndon Johnson, what did you do with it?
How'd you get it?
well, years ago, Daddy participated in a agriculture thing, and Leonard he was first nominated as a representative, and they met down at Driscoll Hotel for some reason, and when we walked out, where Daddy and him were talking, and he gave me a nickel, and Daddy told me, he said, well, he'll be president someday. And I did, put the nickel in my pocket and went around the corner and
It sure does.
bought an ice cream cone.
You got an ice cream cone.
And he still does that.
Talking about politics. You know, we didn't have television for these politicians to get on and have debates and commercials and rallies. Well, I don't think they were even on radio. They weren't on anything. And every year, before we had an election, before the Democratic primary, first election, because we were strictly Democrats in Texas. There was no Republican
During that time.
at that time. It was only there was only the Democratic primary. You could vote Republican in the general election in November, but you never had a chance to vote for any Republicans but we had election, and we had public speaking. Remember,
Down
we
the
had,
baseball park.
oh, we had it was on Main Street, it was on
different
where the
places.
other part was. All my life, I can remember as a little kid, that looking forward to that public speaking night.
Yeah.
And these candidates would come out with their little cards to pass them out. It was strictly a person to person. The candidates talked to the people, voter individually.
I remember like maybe a couple of
Yeah,
times.
but anyway,
Big
these
baseball
candidates would come with a stack of cards and give them to one of the kids there, and give them a nickel or dime and say, here, go pass
them
these
out.
out for
Yeah.
me. And I know my husband said that somebody, one of the guys gave him some one night, said, and gave him a few nickels or something, and says, go pass these out. He said, I took the nickels and went and bought me soda water and threw the
Didn't pass the cards out.
Much for marketing.
Wasn't there an old bandstand and an actual band, not a high school? Wasn't there a band?
There
I
was a
remember-
bandstand down at the Hall Park.
And band that played and
Yes.
y'all did dance.
It was made
I
up
don't
of
know.
a lot of Millses and Weisses and.
Was that the one from Richland, or was that a
No,
different
it's a
one?
Pflugerville.
Richland had a band, Dessau had a band,
Yeah.
Pflugerville had a band. I have this goes on a different tangent, goes to the Schitzen and Kagelin Verein. They
Right.
built the old hall down there.
Now, did that
And you
really,
know, I learned more about the Schitzen and Kagelin Verein on American Pickers. They were
Love
picking
American
someplace up north, and they got to one place, and they had memorabilia from the Schitzen and Kagelin. See, that was a nationwide
Yeah,
right,
organization.
that's right.
I have all the secretary books from that.
really?
Pflugerville one, yeah.
Well, did they really
And
have
they're
them all
all
in
written
there?
in German. They're written in German.
Yeah.
Hildegard Gabert has translated them for me.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting. It's got it in there, you find every dance they had, what band played, how much beer they bought for it, how much whiskey they bought for it, and for every
Sounds
one
like
of their
German.
monthly meetings, who provided this and who provided that, who came with whiskey and who brought oil for the lanterns,
Yeah.
and all this. It's a very interesting.
I bet it is.
Sounds like something we need to do again here.
Sounds like a good German.
Richland
Yeah.
had orchestra,
Had an orchestra.
Yeah.
Pastor
This is
Kasiski
This is, yeah.
was the director, and they had violins and that, they really had a good orchestra. Well, all the old timers, they created their own entertainment.
Yes.
And the Germans,
I often wondered how they learned to play those,
Yeah.
the instruments.
they played them, I don't know.
I don't
They
know.
may have played in Germany.
Well, I mean, like
Came
Don's uncles and them were all
Yeah.
in this
They were
band that they
pretty-
had, and of course they were
I
all.
wonder too where they learned.
I don't know where they learned how to play
Where
all
they
that
get
stuff.
the instruments.
Probably just played by ear.
Maybe I say maybe like him, or
They would all be that musically inclined.
Speaking of this,
Well, we never heard
the
of
candidate things, back in those days, the Schitzen and Kagelin Verein sponsored a day, and the people, all the candidates and the Austin people, rode a special train out to Pflugerville. And it says in there how many
It was big.
cups of coffee they served
Yeah,
in a
I've
day,
seen that, yeah.
and all of that stuff. And that, they came out to do their candidate.
They're stumping.
Yeah, and
They called it stumping.
my dad always told me the story about that. He went down to relatives in Bishop, visiting people in Bishop one time. And they had their candidate thing down there. And Dan Moody, being from Taylor, was down there speaking on behalf of the governor. And he somehow or the other, my dad talked to Dan Moody before Dan Moody talked. And Dan Moody got up there and he says, I know one man in this crowd today. He's Fritz Pfluger from Pflugerville. And, but I mean, that's as far as he went, all the way down there. And went to candidates speaking down there. And
I was thinking that one time, do y'all ever remember, and is my memory wrong, but did Eisenhower come driving through Pflugerville one time?
He did not, but his contingency did.
It was something about
Yes.
Eisenhower came through here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I found out I've been a member of the Hermansons for 65 years. A couple of years ago, got my pin out of Richland.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a local chapter, so I go out there about 3 times a year for their monthly things. Remember having all of that. And I was born in Taylor, but Dr. Lindbergh.
I was gonna
But
say that.
where were
'cause,
some of y'all born?
Gladys said y'all went to Austin, but we
I was
went
born
to,
in Austin.
everything was in Taylor for
I
us.
just,
Doctors,
yeah, I went to Herman
I mean,
Hospital in Taylor. I was born there with Dr. Lindbergh, Russell and I were, because that's where we went.
well, see, he delivered Cynthia too, as a matter of fact, I
Yeah.
think she was his first.
Zach Scott's dad delivered me
In Austin.
in my house.
Oh, in your house. I was wondering how many of y'all were born at home?
My sister was born in the old Wheelan house out here, but I was
Oh,
born
okay.
in
You
Austin.
were born at home?
Can I tell another story from Max? Because he won't think about this, and I've heard this story many times. Because a long time ago, we were talking about, he and I were both remembering the first things we remembered. Okay, and I remembered that Granny, his mama, told me that Max was born actually at Brackenridge. Because her sister, who was Selma Kimball,
Yeah.
okay, had trouble having her babies. And so they had to pay for her to go to the hospital to have the babies. So their daddy, which was his grandpa, said that he would pay for Granny to have her baby in Austin.
Okay.
And so she did. Okay, and the rest of them were born at home.
Really?
But the story is that we were remembering stuff. And he said, I can remember the day I was born. he said, I remember the dogs barking when Dr. So-and-so came to deliver. And I said, you lie, because I know you were born at Brackenridge Hospital. So that was a funny story. That was one of the first memories. I thought that was hilarious.
One of the first memories that I have of Pflugerville.
Yeah.
I remember that.
You thought you remembered the day you were born.
One of the first memories I have of Pflugerville is when, of course, I came when I was married in early 60s, was the fire phone. Did any of you have a fire phone?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I hated the fire
And
phone.
the alarm went off and everybody knew to go fight the fire.
Well, what happened is when a fire was spotted, somebody would call that fire number, and that phone hung in the middle of the hall,
Wow.
right by
Your
all
house.
the bedrooms.
Like everybody-
You couldn't dial out, you could just answer it. And so the first person that answered the phone, because I think there were about 5 of them in different
Oh, it
homes
was more
in the
than
community,
that, I
7,
No,
I
we
don't
did
know.
not have that.
But anyway, when it rang, that person had to go to the fire station and then start the alarm, and then all the volunteers came.
And that was still into the early 70s when I lived out here.
Yes,
Yeah, that was still happening.
and the problem was, people treated it like a gossip thing. I mean, they would call and say, "Oh, what time is the meeting?" And so and so. Oh, my baby's asleep. Leave me alone.
I remember
it was
when-
terrible.
When Shirley and I worked at the city, if the fire alarm went off and then something also happened with the water system. It was the weirdest thing. It was every time, It was like something was gonna happen.
I remember my dad being out all night the night Hurricane Carla hit. And I think I know there was some small fires, maybe electrical fires and everything. And we ended up getting in the middle hall of our house. Remember how much it rained? He traipsed out there. When was Carla? Early 60s?
It was in the 60s.
Yeah.
I remember we still had cotton in the field and everybody came, and we were the only people who made cotton that year. And everybody came and helped us harvest our crop, and we had trailers parked everywhere. Everything there was a shelter. So-
And you see, our fire phone was under my side of the bed.
That's even
He was
worse.
not gonna have that thing under his side of the bed. It's under my side of the bed. Now, you let it ring 2 or 3
Yes, you
times
did.
before you answer it. I don't wanna be the first one to answer it. I get press that back and get down there.
A dedicated
Turn the alarm
firefighter.
on.
I'm sure we all remember the big fire.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Talking
yes.
about fire, I mean, my mother was so afraid of fire. I remember we'd come up to church, I grew up on the farm, not in town, so I don't remember a lot of the town things that these ladies are talking about, but when we got on our way home, we weren't driving very fast, but we saw, homes on fire and different things, and that was so scary, back in I was probably 50s, I guess, too, I don't know, I was born in 44, and I think that's why when they built the house in town, my parents, it's all electric, because they were so afraid of these fires, and in those days, nothing was saved, really, was it?
Brick and
I mean, if your house
Well, it was hard to say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not much,
Well,
so,
my other grandma's house burned to the ground, the water heater blew up.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
crawled out, and she was in her 80s and crawled out of the
But it was-
house
it was-
alive.
Actually, the fire department started in 55, and
Yeah,
it was more of a grass fire.
Yeah.
oh,
Right.
I mean, there were lots, there was homes that were saved, but also they were mostly for grass fire. Didn't have but one truck, and
Weren't even
Yeah.
fire
well, you
hydrants.
did what you could, I mean,
there weren't any fire hydrants.
Yeah, you just had
Were you a charter,
Pardon?
you were a charter member of the fire department, weren't you?
Yeah,
Wasn't your dad the first fire chief?
my dad was the
Yeah,
first
the
fire
rest-
chief.
Dad was the first fire chief.
Y'all just had that one red truck.
Yeah.
Didn't hold that much water either.
And I'll remember our fire, I call it barbecue, is that what we called it when we got together?
Yes,
The
fireman's
barbecue.
Fireman's barbecue, that was always a wonderful.
Down in that little concrete
Yeah,
block
but then we had
building.
all the trailers sit out there, we stand around there and eat. It was a big crowd. It was a big
Nice community,
get together.
get together.
There were also beer
Thinking about it on
establishments,
that.
alcoholic establishments.
All
around.
in Pflugerville?
Oh, yeah, quite a few.
I know we were talking about that, was that at the meeting yesterday? What, we were talking about, somebody was talking about what did he call them? And we said, those were, he called them, this guy called them taverns, and we said, they weren't taverns in Pflugerville. Well, you know what they were, beer joints.
Yeah, that's what we call them, beer joints.
You know, I'm sorry.
That's what a tavern is.
I know, but I mean, that wasn't the terminology that I heard, I don't know.
When I moved out here and I was early married and Max worked in the town and I was staying home with the kids. And I can tell you that, now, of course, it was after the 65, but still, it's interesting because Max's daddy and Max and then our son Matthew, even when he was little, they would play dominoes at Marshall's, always. And I knew that after he went to work, it was gonna be at least another hour before he came home, because he had to stop by, and I always said that was the Pflugerville newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
When he came home, that's
My
when he
dad
would
came
tell
from
me
town,
everything
yeah,
that had
go down
gone on
there
in
and
town,
have
because they would sit there at Marshall's and have a
Give Mama
beer.
time to get supper ready.
I have
that
pictures
was
of
the- that
Daddy
was the
there,
newspaper.
but he was drinking soda water, he wasn't drinking beer. He was-
Well, I don't know who your daddy was, but my son and husband was not drinking soda.
Well, I'm not saying he never did, I just said it was picture. But that was going back to the Lively Cafe, you know, that was the only cafe in town.
That was a great
And the
place.
funny thing was, I would spend a lot of time at my grandpa and grandma Bowles, which y'all know is Gatlinburg today. That was the farm, the old Conrad Pfluger
Yep.
homestead, and grandma would get on the phone, where is grandpa? And she'd call the Lively Cafe and he'd be there, but he'd come on home, it's time to eat, you know. And
I played with all my grandma's contemporaries, played it with the Bridge Club every month. If there was someone missing, I was the dummy to play.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so we, learned to play bridge, and then I learned to play poker from all my dad's brothers and sisters. And our big 4th of July was a few firecrackers and some sparklers.
Yeah.
And Pfluger reunion down at the park, if you were a Pfluger or some friend of a Pfluger.
I didn't grow up a Pfluger, and lived there on the corner, and I was wanted to go to that Pfluger reunion so bad. Everybody's going down there, and I couldn't go.
Yeah.
You finally took care of
I
that.
finally married
Yeah, she
Pfluger.
took care of As far as playing, though, we played under the quilt, what do you put the quilts on when they were quilting?
The frame.
Frame, and that's where we kids
Oh,
played, we
yeah.
got under
Yeah.
there and we played.
We used to quilt
Probably
at
irritated the
Saturdays.
quilters, but.
And you know what I found? I got 2 of those. I got the quilting sticks whenever the 3 people before Ada and Salma's house sold. They had put them out there at the road to just for anyone, and they're where the old quilting. So I have those. I was so excited to find those. They must have been out in the garage.
You used to.
No, I have them. I can look at them and remember when I used to help quilt. We had board games set up all the time. You know, we didn't have color TV till I don't know when, and we had Monopoly and Battleship and every kind of game. Chess. Grandpa played chess and checkers with Grandma and Grandpa, and bridge and dominoes. And Grandma would get so mad at Grandpa, and she would go, "If you can't beat him, cheat him." And he'd yell, "Emma," and he'd throw the dominoes across the table. Russell and I were I'd play with Grandma, and Russell would play with Grandpa. He'd get so mad at her.
I remember when Melanie
Dominoes
was a
will
little girl.
bounce.
her dad was our coach, and she'd ride on the bus with us to our basketball games. You remember that, Bubby?
Vaguely.
Yeah, I did, yeah. I just thought y'all were all so beautiful and so grown up. And Gloria was just one of my, I thought she was just this great beauty. She's not that much older. But you were like, you were like homecoming queen or something. You were very popular in your that beautiful teal dress.
That was Gloria's dress.
Yeah, I remember that. I just thought y'all were, and my dad would have those fish fries and things, and y'all would come over sometimes to the house. And
Do y'all remember when they used to have revivals into downtown? Like, you don't remember that?
that was before my time, because I never went to any
No, we
here.
didn't.
I can remember there was
A
set up
revival.
tent- a revival tent down there. It was set it up down there kind of where Wordisms is. And it would go on for several nights. And, I mean, we didn't go. I mean, it was so different than anything that we, but I can remember we walked down there and I can remember looking around the corner from the bank and
Yeah.
watching them. And I know it was a very different kind of worship than us Lutherans, We called them the Holy Rollers.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
My dad tells the story, if there's any of you here who are Baptist, no offense, really. They used to do all of there was a Baptist church in Pflugerville.
Yes.
Down there on the corner, where there's insurance office, where they turn up to your house. And they baptized in the creek. They had their baptisms in the creek. And
In Y'all's Creek?
I don't know where.
You don't know where, huh?
It was before my time.
Yeah, okay.
Well, if they were near you.
I
must be
recall.
But the Black Baptists did for a long, long time.
Yeah, the
St. Mary's did, but the white ones did too.
St. Mary's would,
But anyway, my dad told the story about that, so there was some young girl that they knew, I guess was in school with them and in the community with them, that was a Baptist and was getting baptized that day. So this bunch of everybody went down to the creek to watch her get baptized. She took her shoes off and had holes in her stocking. And they made more fun of that girl getting baptized with holes in her stocking.
And the creeks were clean back then too.
Oh, our kids
And
played
you
in the
could
creek
swim.
all the time.
You could drink out of that creek at the park
That
back when I
was
was
a
little.
wonderful creek back when we had
Yeah,
the
it
wasn't
Western
dark,
Festival and their
it was
Sunday
so
school
clean.
picnics. It was so wide and clean and.
And that place where the boys always jumped off the thing, but what I remember a lot is for both the Sunday school picnic and that was from the Emmanuel Lutheran that we had down there, and the Pfluger reunion. So many people came up with cut feet. I mean, I don't know why I remember that, but I guess, and that was just, that time we didn't have people throwing things
St.
out.
Mary's would have their baptism, they would come down through the CC camp. They come right down to where Grandpa crossed the creek, and there was a spring there, and they would baptize, whenever they have a baptism, they'd be there. And we could see them in the house, but we never, Grandpa wouldn't let us go down there.
So Audrey, how did you get involved in Pflugerville? You haven't said a
What
word.
year did y'all move?
When did you move?
1959.
59.
I don't think we feel like this.
We,
Those sandwiches are raised.
we lived in town and had moved to Austin from where we were kind of circuitous. I grew up in San Antonio, and we got married and we moved to Corpus Christi where Leonard had a job. And then he went on the road a while. We lived in a godforsaken place of Bay City, Texas. And we lived there about 6 months and decided that was enough of that. And then he wanted to come back. Leonard grew up in Austin. He was born on Patterson Avenue over there close to 6th Street.
So you don't want any?
The Mopac. And
How
So
far
we
off of
moved-
Congress was that, Sanderson?
pardon,
How far off of Congress?
is Patterson Avenue?
Yeah,
It's just before you get to Mopac on
okay,
6th
on the
Street.
west side
On the
of
west
Congress.
And he grew up there and I grew up in San Antonio. And we both worked at Western Auto at one point and that's where we met. And then
In Austin?
in San Antonio.
In San Antonio.
And he was in charge of
Thank you.
the appliance for that district. And then from there we moved to Corpus Christi. But then we moved to Austin and he went to work and had part ownership in the old Crestview Builder Supply. And we decided, we built a house in town and did all that, and then decided we wanted to rear our kids in the country because that was going to be a whole lot more fun than living in town. And this was in the early 60s, and that's if you remember when about the drugs hit, started hitting the schools in Austin. And so we decided we'd move out here. And so we bought 90 acres out here, partly from First Federal and partly under Leonard's Veterans Land Deal. And that's how we got to Pflugerville.
So then how did you get interested in getting the library started?
Because the city of Austin and Travis County discontinued the bookmobile, and we decided Nadine Whiteley and excuse me a minute while I turn off my
Modern times.
machine here, if I can find it.
It really is wonderful. They started a library.
And
My goodness, and see what we have today. Wow.
we decided that we needed a library out here, and we figured the only way we were going to get one, it's up to me. And we decided we were going to have it, and Nadine called a meeting over there at the old North Rural Center when it was over there where the backside of El Rincon, where there was that was where the first North Rural Center was. And she called a meeting, and the young lady that was in charge there helped us. And I'll never forget at the first meeting, Nadine, those of you that didn't know Nadine, she was a special person.
Yes, she was.
And she had my total admiration.
She told it like it was.
And she backed up what she said.
That's right, that's exactly.
And the first meeting, she sat there, she had a huge garden, and she sat there and snapped beans the whole time we had the first meeting, because she had to get the beans snapped for the next day. And from there on, we just started, and we had bought, we put the word out that anybody had any books they wanted to give us, well, we would take them. And so we started collecting books, and then we got about that time, if you remember, this was early '81, and at that time the city was going, the society or the social scene was calling a lot of downsizing of big companies, and so the big companies gave us lots of furniture and stuff like that. But we started out collecting shelving, going down the alleys behind the stores that threw out furniture shelving, and collected them to start with. And that's where we got our start with our furniture. And it just grew from there. We walked the streets and asked for donations for books or money, either one you were willing to give us. And then we had bake sales on the corner lot there across where it used to be the Willard Pfluger had on the corner there of Railroad where El Rincon is now. He had a distributor for butane and gas and Texas.
I can't look.
And,
brand was like Mobile or something.
Humble.
Okay, you're right. But anyway, he let us use the parking lot there, and we sold cakes on Saturdays and cookies and stuff, and that's where we got our start raising money. And everything was volunteer until we heard that the city, the CTLS, which is Central Texas Library System, had a deal if you had any kind of taxpayer support or municipal funding support, that they would match your purchases of books. So we decided we had to have some kind of money from Pflugerville to, so that we could qualify for them buying books, because then we could buy books for half price. And so we can thank Clarence Bowles for that. He was the one that finally convinced the city fathers to just give us anything. And they gave us $1,000 a year to start with.
Wow.
So that we could qualify, and that got us our start. And then John Pfluger let us live in that room.
In that space where you would walk like this.
You walk
It was
very
so
carefully.
tiny. And then you had a little child that you could keep up with them because they couldn't go in very far.
And then it had one light bulb and no air conditioning, no utilities, no restrooms.
Which one are you talking about? Now, where
Right there in the bank.
Right, that little city,
Right
right,
behind the bank.
office you
Right behind the bank. I
yeah, the
remember.
post office was where the windows were, and there was a little place between the post office and the mayor building.
Arrow strip.
It
Little
was
bit.
about probably 15 to 20 feet wide and about 40 feet deep and 10 feet high.
So when was the city incorporated, in 65? 65, so.
This was in 81,
Yeah,
82,
so it was
and
much
then
later.
in 82 or 83, my historian over there knows better than I do. When we finally convinced the city that we could rent that house if they would redo that house on 3rd Street. And we rented that from them. The deal was is they would let us have the library there if we would recarpet it and take care of the inside. And they put the air conditioning in and we did the rest.
It was a nice little building.
It was a nice little.
It was,
It was
nice
a great
step up
start.
that
I
time.
mean,
It
If
was.
it hadn't been for the generosity of the city, that library would not be there.
You had a thrift store for
Yes.
quite a
Yeah.
while up there in
Yeah.
Miss EJ's house.
Yeah, we had a thrift store up there and Nadine was responsible for
Right.
that. And that's how come we bought that piece of land that the first library was on, is that's how we were able to afford it. And the reason we were able to buy it at all was because that was about the time, if y'all remember, the RTC and the real estate market went down the tube.
Yes.
And they took possession of all, lots of foreclosures. And we were able to cut a deal on that acre .6 that the first library was built on. And we paid for that through the thrift shop.
Wow.
I'll never forget when that street, that bust hit. And we were working for the city. I mean, we were getting building permits like crazy. And I mean, in a matter of a month, they just stopped. I mean, it was like, no more building permits. Houses sat unfinished, you know, and builders had nervous breakdowns. It was a bad
What
day.
year was that?
About 85. About 85.
Yeah.
It was just, it came to a screeching halt.
Yeah, it hit overnight.
It did. I mean, it was like 1 month we had all these building permits, next month none. And that went on for a while.
And that's when everything, the bottom just fell out.
It did.
And we bought that piece of land for practically nothing. Everybody thought we had lost our minds
Yeah.
buying that piece of land, but we bought it so cheap. And we were doing so well because at that time, everybody started shopping in thrift shops because that's what we had to do.
It's crazy. It was
And
amazing
so-
how that fixed, how that changed.
It was, everything just worked out wonderfully for us. We were lucky.
Great. I hate to say so much, but I beat you. I was a librarian in Pflugerville way before you were.
And we thank you
I was
for
in
all
high
your
school.
history.
I was in high school. I was in high school. Y'all talked about bookmobile. Did
Yeah.
you know that before the bookmobile was, that we had permanent libraries? That through the Austin Public Library brought them out here. And they had some of us high school kids working.
And so like
On
where was it?
Saturday.
Like, so where was
Okay,
it?
we had one. It was, I don't know if y'all remember, in the old bank building, there's the little corner that was back, if you went in the doors and of course they tellers and stuff were around.
Next
But
to
there
the
was a
mall.
little
Kind of to the
corner.
left there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
little corner back
Oh,
there.
okay,
We
okay.
had shelves and we had books in there.
Okay.
And the Austin Public Library bought books out there. We were open every Saturday afternoon, and I think in the summertime, then another afternoon during the week.
Yeah.
Then that got a little bit small, And then we didn't have a doctor going, we had doctors that were upstairs at Maisie's all the time, at the in Maisie drugstore. And we had one of the rooms up there, and we had a library open. And I was, when I was in
That's the
high
first
school-
I have heard that there was a library, and Pam will back us up, that's the first we've heard that
Okay,
there was a
well, I
library
worked in
there.
that library many a Saturday afternoon.
We're gonna come try to document that, so we
Yeah.
can, we
I don't
need
remember
to
that.
get
You
that.
Before my time.
Well, you weren't here when I was in high school.
Almost.
No, you
You're
weren't.
so young.
That was before
While he
1944.
was around.
Mildred
You're gonna
Ward
come see
worked
you.
in there,
Does he know these
Mildred did,
stories?
Linnell did,
He knows about.
I did, and I don't know precious.
And how you wouldn't let
Just
anybody take
few of
his
us that
money
lived
out.
in town. We ran the library. We didn't really run it, I mean, they had it, but we worked. We
Well,
checked
so,
out.
and this was through the Austin Public
Austin
Library?
Public Library.
And then they
yeah.
discontinued
Then they
it.
discontinued it and did the bookmobile.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they stopped
Later
that.
on, they did bookmobile.
And then they did away with the bookmobile, and that's when we came in
Yeah.
to being, but that is an interesting bit that we haven't covered,
Yeah,
and
nice, yeah.
we'll need to get come
We
see
didn't
you
know that.
and
We didn't know
document
As I
that.
said,
that.
Gladys knows things that.
Oh, yeah, I
so she, you know,
I wish
she-
I could
Yeah.
hint out her brain.
Yeah.
Gloria's reminded me of something that Max has also always told us about banking and your grandpa and the Depression. What happened? What did he do during the Depression out here?
When he was banking.
They just owned clothes for one day, and
Yeah.
they opened it up again.
But what did he do?
Well, I think he went into Austin, I'm not sure about, but he had friends that helped him.
Didn't your dad be a part of
And
that?
my dad.
Your dad's part of that?
He and
Fred, and
I don't know if it was the third one, but they went down there to somebody in the banking department. They had locked the doors that afternoon,
Grandpa,
and they went down to Austin that night, and somebody says, you boys cannot close Pflugerville Bank. It's got to stay open. And through that man, they worked that night and opened it the next morning.
they had some Jewish friends, anyway.
I don't know who the
So
guy
what,
could be.
But I didn't, he always talked about that they closed the bank.
Yeah, they
And
did.
they wouldn't let anybody get any money
They
out.
closed
Well,
one
they
afternoon
probably
and
did,
opened it
yeah.
the next morning.
That was in the
But
30s.
they opened
To
it the
me,
next
surprised
day.
that it was open the next morning.
them mentioning the CCC camp, can you
Yeah.
tell any
Yeah.
stories from that, since that was on Grandpa Campbell's place?
I was doing.
Grandpa leased the federal government 10 acres for $1 a year just to make it legal.
Wow.
And it was on the southwest corner of the property. And they had a doctor, had a lieutenant that was administrator, and his wife taught school. She taught band.
Who?
Miss Barr.
Yeah, and history
Yeah.
and band.
And
She started the first
what they did,
band.
they built, well, they helped the farmers out in the agriculture. They worked through the pastures where they had cattle and the
Well, they built a lot of,
Terraces and,
terraces,
Good for-
fences.
Yeah, we have some terraces on our place out there that they built, the structures, the water structures.
Yes.
the cement, yeah.
Yeah, they had, that was their,
How long was the camp open?
it was open from about 34, I think it was open. And it closed in 44, I guess.
Yeah,
It was,
So 10 years or so?
10 years or so.
about 10 years?
About 10 years that it
yeah.
was in operation?
Yeah. It was, the war, all the boys went to war. I mean, it was,
Oh, that's when the war started and they disbanded.
Second World War.
Yeah, that was an effort to.
I remember, Lou Hornsby said their daddy wouldn't let those girls come to town
Yeah.
Mix with those.
because of the men there at the CCC.
Oh my gosh.
Some of them married, didn't they? Some of them married?
Yeah, a few of the girls found their husbands
Yeah.
at the CCC.
I was like, maybe they should have, because they had some American.
That was a big thing in the Pflugerville community. An outsider,
I can
Oh,
imagine.
marry an
that's for sure.
outsider.
Well, it was still
Wow.
big in sixties when you came in.
That's
Yes,
right.
it
Like
was.
if you were shopping at Marshall's grocery store, a stranger walked in, like who in the world is that, you know?
I remember.
You remember, you were one of those strangers.
Fairly insular.
We were
at the time.
outsiders for years. And the
When did
Deering
they-
kids were the only ones that weren't related. The Burns and the Deering kids were the only ones.
I was born here, and then during the war, my dad tried to make a living as a mechanic here, he just couldn't. And so he got a job working on airplanes at the Naval Air Station in Carcass. So then we moved down there for a few years. But I was lucky when I came back, because I was related to everybody. So I was kind of like an insider.
We were outsiders, but those outsiders on the hill out
Yeah,
there for years.
I still hear people say
Gretchen over
they're
here is trying to tell me
outsiders.
that 2 years ago.
I keep
She's
telling
still
her.
an outsider. You're not an outsider, Gretchen. When did they quit singing in German? Were y'all, I know my grandma only sang, a few
Well,
songs.
you know,
She
they
didn't speak
discouraged,
German
they
to me.
discouraged people
Right.
speaking in German.
It was
World War II.
Yeah, yeah,
I can
after the
tell you.
war, people
They had
changed the spelling of
confirmation
their
in
names.
German.
yeah.
Tell,
Yeah.
how long? How long did they have confirmation in German?
I don't know, plays maybe.
No, I have written English.
Remember what year?
I only learned a couple of songs in German.
Even Kraft and down in Richmond, I can tell you that they were, I think she was the last place.
In German?
It was about 4 years. Yeah, they, I don't know, let's see, that'd be about 39, 40.
Again, that was the war.
Yeah.
That's right.
That was
Because of the
influence of the war. No more speaking German.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, not in
parents
public.
spoke, but they didn't want me to know what they were
They
talking
spoke in the
about.
house plenty.
That's for sure.
Well, we spoke German at home because my grandmother, she could speak English as well as I could, but you didn't talk to her except in German.
Oh,
And that's why, one of the reasons we moved out here, we felt comfortable, we
German,
could
yeah.
understand what was going on. Even though nobody would talk to us, but
if they were talking.
we could understand what was being said.
Well, Gladys, did you and Max go to what, and Harry Dodge talked about German school?
No, but I didn't go to German
That was
school.
after you,
Before
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, she always talked about they went to,
I
regular
think
public
so,
school and then
it
they had to
was-
go to German school. I thought it was located somewhere around in the manual, or
It
maybe,
wasn't the original German school, that little old building that,
yeah,
well, it was sat there right on the cemetery ground,
okay.
that they eventually tore it down. I don't know,
Yeah.
I guess they did.
But they had they had to go to school twice then.
I think that's where they had German.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a child, they had German school down in Richmond.
Yeah.
And Aunt Selma taught it, and she picked me up to go down to participate. Anyway, I come home and I said I wasn't going back because I couldn't speak German. I couldn't understand what they was talking about.
Let's see, we had German church service.
And Grandma Clyde, Mother's mother, she never spoke in me.
She never spoke English?
That I know of. We thanked her in Germany.
Dankeschön.
Dankeschön.
Oh, yeah. And we said the table blessing in German forever. Both grandparents and, Kammer Jesus.
He also told me about he would tell me about the Grandma Clattenhoff, and that's, that house is over there on the way to Hutto, and Max's cousin has that house now, and that's where Granny was born. His mama was born, all of her family were all born there. But anyway, he would say that every Sunday they would go and have dinner. Well, they would have one Sunday there and then one Sunday at the Kimball house.
Yeah.
And then he would say that the older people ate first.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And,
Oh,
but
yes,
she
yeah.
sat at the table for all the tables. And she always said the German prayer, and then nobody got up to leave till she said the prayer after the meal.
Yes.
And then the next age group came. And then the last age group came. And we talk about how it is different now. You know, you want to get the kids out of
That's
there, the
exactly-
kids come and eat and let them go away, you know.
And there was no paper plates,
And
you
there
washed
was-
dishes in
And there
the
was no prayer before starting, and you were not dismissed until the last prayer was said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she sat at that table the whole
So she
time.
ate with everybody, right?
She ate with
She stayed
everybody.
at the table with everybody.
She was the hostess and she ate with
I
everybody.
see.
Yeah.
She had it
Well, I
organized,
remember,
sounds like.
I don't remember when did that switch, but it was probably us, the generation who had to wait always. We thought, we get our kids to bed first.
They're the ones that changed it, huh?
I can remember high school, we were out at your grandma, and Ida Heddy's. Oh God, she had just about half of Travis County there that Sunday. And we were bold, we were big. And we had to wait. We just took off walking. We were gonna walk up to where you live. At that time, Edgar and Mildred and Manel
Yes.
and Marvin
Yeah,
lived there.
they
They said, we've got some sardines in our.
Sardines.
Sardines, some sardines. And they never got us back. They had to get in the car and check.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
We still do that at 4th of July at Julie at my Aunt Marilyn's. And the last couple of years, the smallest kids, they finally let them go. But now I'm one of the older ones. So we had to go and we sing God Bless America. My Aunt Marilyn, we do the God Bless America and sing it a cappella. And then we do the table prayer. And then it was starting with the older ones and down to the last little kids. And it's really funny. They call that immersion now, Max, where you just are immersed in the language and you learn it. You don't speak any English. I think they have a couple of maybe immersion classes out at Riojas, or they have some Spanish-speaking classes where they're learning Spanish.
Well, that's good.
It's kids learning
I mean,
Spanish for the
these days,
first
I tell
time.
you what, when you work with the public, you find out that you need to know Spanish. I mean, it's.
I think they should learn it in the kindergarten
These are they're learning Spanish.
and not be optional,
It's good to be bilingual.
everybody.
No, it's
And the
good.
opposite, if you can't speak English,
Yeah.
the opposite. We're
Really
talking
helps.
about,
John.
out of Grandpa and Grandma's place, I
Yeah.
think I remember the most about the Christmases there and butchering, And I don't remember butchering hogs at the Bowles' for some reason, but Christmas, there was a room with the door closed and you did not go in there until they let you.
Yeah.
There, the tree was in there and the
Santa
presents.
Claus did that.
And yeah, Santa Claus did that. And there, we always had wine, where it said F.J. Bowles. We didn't get much wine there. Yeah, I guess they were just a little different way, but
The heavies.
then you always had that bowl of fruit. That was a big gift, fruit.
Oh, yeah. Oranges.
I mean, that was, you had.
Oranges were a treat. It was part of Christmas.
Yeah, so,
Everybody got a whole big box of apples for Christmas.
yeah.
My grandma made spritz and
Apples and oranges didn't grow all year long like they do now.
Yeah, they'll be good in December, I guess.
You what? Oh, okay.
I remember the ice boxes. Some people still had ice boxes.
Yeah.
We had the well, she had the well,
Yeah.
covered well right by the
And
house.
that water was so cold.
I know.
You get
My
it out.
grandma
You could
always
drink it
made
too.
Jello. We just had it in the wintertime because
Oh, because of
Oh,
the.
that's true, yeah.
they didn't have
Ice
refrigerator.
cream, ice cream.
I was thinking that y'all talking about food, and one of the things I was asking Max, and he didn't say it, about the chickens. They would actually can chickens. They would take a whole chicken and Granny would can them.
Yeah.
And then they would have them all winter long or whatever. Yeah, she,
Well, they cull them in the
They
fall.
cull 'em.
Cull chickens in the fall, so we didn't feed those hens when they weren't laying. In the spring, they'd start laying and laying eggs. And that's the reason you have, you can.
You can, the chicken?
The whole chicken.
The whole
They
head,
had,
not the head.
they had a canner. It was a canner.
Every day, not the head.
I think they were probably
You
plain.
cleaned it up and everything.
It'd be like you would be, have it ready to cook.
Cooked, yeah.
And it was
Yeah,
cooked.
That's right.
It was cooked,
Oh,
but
it
it
was
was
cooked.
canned then.
Way ahead of the time there, I canned the chicken.
Well, they had no refrigeration, so they didn't have freezers.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, they,
That's why
even
you
further back, they had
canned, you
the
canned your
cellars and
fruit and you
everything.
canned your
Cellars.
meat.
All those pickles and tomatoes, man, we used to can hundreds of jars of pickles.
But you know, they didn't have TV to watch, so.
Well,
But they
most,
did a lot of lace making and tagging
A lot of
and
lace
crochet.
making.
Their hands were always busy.
Grandma taught me how to do the one shell pattern of lace. But the good thing about, they knew how to do all that canning and everything. You hardly ever saw any botulism or anything. They know how to use that
Yeah, they
vinegar.
did. That's a
And they
good
knew how to
point.
boil it, that ball of bath. And my mother used to make thousands of jars of pickles out of my other grandma's, or even more. And they put them in the storm cellar. My grandma had that storm cellar in her yard. Go
I
down
was always
there.
afraid of those pressure cookers, you know, like if they were.
Yeah.
My dad did those. He cooked all kind of meat. But I don't remember having any meat canned.
I remember there
Pickle.
being so many berries along the railroad track, and
Yeah.
everybody would go and pick
Yeah.
blueberries.
Yeah.
And after Otto Pfluger's, after Mrs., that old Mrs. Otto Pfluger died, Otto married Peggy.
Yes.
And so since I lived in that neighborhood, she decided as a young bride that we would go and pick dewberries and make dewberry jelly. So she had it all organized in her kitchen, and we went and did all this, and we picked tons of dewberries. And the recipe calls like two cups of dewberries, 2 cups of sugar, boil it and do it. I don't remember what the recipe is exactly. We decided we'd be there all day if we did it 2 cups at a time. So we washed the dewberries, put them all in one pot, with all the sugar in it.
Oh, dear.
It would not cook.
Oh,
Dum, dum, dum. We just poured it out, for hours we poured it out.
We go pick them off the garage. And guess what? Those dewberries are still out there, because I have a friend at the rec center who goes and picks those wild dewberries and makes dewberry pie and brings it to the rec center. But she had some growing on her garage, and you had to watch out for the stickers, for the prick, you know.
You had to watch out for the snakes and
Finger- Oh, yeah, snakes out
You
there.
know, one thing y'all haven't talked about is washing clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a funny story in
I
town.
bet you've got a lot of funny stories
Yeah,
about washing
Grandma said
clothes,
there was
because it
one-
ain't like it is now.
Yeah, there's one lady in town, I mean, you know, they wouldn't wash clothes because this other lady, she didn't like her, she'd burn that day.
Oh, burn the garbage that
It was all clotheslines, there weren't any clothes dryers.
But you know what happened if she burned, you know,
Right,
everybody burned their trash, you know.
They had all those white sheets,
They
and
had
it
their
looked so
ways.
pretty out there.
But there was a wash pot. There was
Yeah.
a wash pot that had a fire under it.
Yeah,
And that's
Making
what-
a lot of
I even
soap.
remember, I grew up in Taylor, okay?
yeah.
I was in the big
You were in the
city.
big city.
But my mama did that.
Yeah.
She had a wash
That's
pot.
where we were born.
And it had to be heated, and that's what she put your clothes in and washed them.
Talking about the CCC camp, my mother did wash for, she took in
Wow.
washing from the CCC camp.
Oh.
Yeah, make money.
Yeah.
The one here in Pflugerville.
That
See,
was
we
good.
thought I would have a wash.
Somehow she, Dad's cousin Roy Pokrant was part of the CCC camp, and somehow he,
Got her that
because of
job.
that, she got involved in
Wow.
just washing some clothes.
I was gonna, do you remember how many guys
Well,
Live there?
I'm sure she only washed for the officers to see them.
I don't know who she washed for, she just also said she took
She
in some
couldn't have done
washing
for all of them.
No, not for all,
Yeah.
no,
No.
somehow she had some,
Because
Yeah. I don't know how many guys there, it was lots of them.
there were 100 of them.
yeah, no, she didn't do it for all of them, that's for sure.
That's a lot of washing.
You know, back to the chickens. You didn't go to the grocery store and buy chicken if you wanted chicken. Everybody had a chicken coop in their backyard and had chickens and raising those chickens. So that when they wanted chicken, they would go out and butcher a chicken.
Yeah, and good fresh chicken.
Yeah.
Or a turkey.
They had beef clubs also, and they kill beef, depending on how many join the club. If you had 15 or so families, or 10, maybe, I don't know. Depending on the club, and
Yeah.
they butcher a calf and divide it up. They'd have a person that kept track of, if you got to hind quarter or forequarter or whatever.
So then the next time you get the other part, huh?
Yeah, and the person that killed the calf would get all the offal and he would share it with whoever he wanted to. Like the liver, I mean, you know, it was a big piece of meat you wouldn't want to ever eat for.
You wouldn't want that whole liver.
So share it with your neighbor.
So did that come into place after, deep freezes?
No, it was before. I think it was before.
So where was the meat kept? Oh, yeah.
They
You just cook it.
they had a,
Smokehouse, you know?
No.
Well, was it
It
not
was-
that you would use for a week?
Yeah, you
or-
didn't get that
You
much.
use it up in a.
Yeah, you didn't,
Yeah.
you wouldn't store up for
Well,
a
they didn't tell us.
Okay.
there was this, meat sack, everybody had his own, container. It was a sack, it was heavily woven, like,
Canvas kinda.
yeah, it was, and they, put with it every portion you got, and you keep it in an ice box 2 or 3 days, and you'd eat that, and then start on the chicken patties, chickens, or whatever you eat.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people, a lot of folks in Dam eat every day. I mean, you know,
So did they like deliver every week? Like you get a week supply?
I don't think it'd be that much, no.
what depends on the club, I mean, some clubs every week, some every other week.
I don't know how they did that.
Because I mean, you couldn't keep the meat too long just in the ice
No,
box.
you couldn't.
No.
We never did join
They
it.
salted it down
Smoked
and
it.
jerkied it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beef jerky, pemmican like the Indians.
They salted it down, because I remember my mother and dad, doing some of that. They salted down and they would keep from the salting.
Yeah, salt wasn't
That's why all those people were in such good shape, making all that, doing all that physical labor just to eat a fried chicken. Or climbing the stairs and making the soap and, you know, they were so good a shape, even in older age. They were in very good shape.
They were.
Maybe Max remembers, I guess, this was in the early 30s, I guess. When the Depression first hit, and these government programs were going into effect.
Oh, yeah.
And they made of the farmers, they thinned you out. If you were a cattle raiser or a rancher, you had to, they made you kill your cattle.
Really?
They dug big ditches, ran the cattle in there and shot them and buried them.
It broke my father,
Now, why was
I mean,
that?
my grandfather.
So that was a program that
The
started.
program, that was a Roosevelt farm program.
That-
And they allowed you to keep one that you could, and we had, your aunts, that Myrtle and them that had a pressure cooker. We didn't have pressure cooker at our house. But they came and they canned the meat from one animal. But you had to cut down, they were cutting you down.
Was that so that you didn't have to feed them or what? I mean, it looks to me like that was getting rid of food.
Max was getting ready to
They
say.
did it, they did it.
In
You bet, that's right. There's somebody
They
in
broke
Greece.
my grandfather.
they, when the depression started, to get the economy going again, Roosevelt decided that he would, create an artificial, increase the price of things, so he killed off everything that just create a capitalistic form of, and so, you know, this is I happened to run into a old timer in Abilene. And the reason I was there, I was working for a highway department, and I stayed at a motel. And he and I got to talking, and he said he made more money during the Depression than he did since then. He said when he'd go to Mexico, he lived West Texas, somewhere, Texas or something. They go to Mexico and buy them cows for $5, and then sell them to the government for $12. The government would give you $12 for each cow you sell, you killed, and he said he made more money that way.
Just artificial shortages, and all those people in soup lines
And
and
they wouldn't
in the
even
cities.
they wouldn't let you give that meat to the poor, because that's what broke my,
That's crazy.
dad's father, I mean, my dad,
So
because,
bad.
he said, if I can't give that meat to the poor people, I'm not gonna take the money. And it broke him. He lost the ranch and
But I
everything.
know we got to kill, we didn't have to kill too many of our herd, I don't think. But I know that we had somebody, they came and they canned some of that meat. We had one, they however much they allowed you to use to keep.
That, I've just never heard of that.
What is her,
Crazy
Yeah.
thing.
what about the same way?
You're the
Don't you
first one
remember
I've
this
heard
one?
that can confirm that with me, because I have heard that, and I knew my father went through that.
Yeah.
And you're the first one I have heard that
We
confirmed
did
it.
it happened at my house.
So what year was that?
I don't know, it's in the early thirties.
Yeah, I was born in '29, and so it happened along about the end of the '20s, the early '30s.
Wow.
Well, you've heard of the
Good
farm
economic program
program.
there.
I never have understood the government and the farm programs, where they limit you how much you can plant and all of that stuff. That all blew out of
That
that,
New Deal stuff,
out at that time, yeah.
FDR,
Mhm,
and subsidies, and
mhm,
one president's gonna do this and the next one's gonna do that.
mhm.
We don't have an oil shortage right now.
And
Gas
they
is gonna go to $5. It's all artificially
They
created.
don't,
I think so too.
they pay you not to plant, that's how come we
Yeah.
get money created. It's
Crazy.
crazy.
Well, you know,
Not
what really
everyone knows
concerns
they
me
taxes.
is all this good, beautiful black land Texas, they're covering up with concrete. How are we gonna feed all these people that are coming down
Houses.
here and will continue to come?
I don't understand, but I tell you
Really
what, it's
crazy.
hard to sell your crop these days. I mean, you know,
You can't sell
nobody
that
wants your,
stuff.
nobody wants what you got.
Preach.
And that, and to give you a small price for it, you know, you can hold it forever, they finally buy it. for a
Well, I
cheap
saw
price.
something on Facebook, the 2018 farm program,
These are good.
where the government was gonna pay you, I mean, you go into the program to where you can't sell your land to a developer. It has to stay in ag.
Conservation.
And so, well, maybe they're getting to the idea that we need some land
I
to
mean,
grow our
yeah,
crops.
that's good to know.
they have had these things, it's kind of a conservation thing, you know.
But it's marginal land that they've been putting
That,
in.
that is really right. That is
It's
really
what,
right.
what'd you
It's
say?
not the good
It's
farmland.
marginal land.
Oh, yes.
It's just the land that doesn't grow much
Well,
anyway,
that's exactly right.
in the first place.
Yeah, to see them covering up all of T-Boy's rich land is just,
Makes you sick.
It's sad,
The water
it's sad.
is last. The water be the next thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more important than your land right now.
Almost,
Yeah.
almost.
All over the world, I mean, waters. Shortage. God.
crazy
I
world.
guess we solved all the problems.
Wouldn't it be nice?